Who's on the screen with the comic book scene? No one but Dan Shaheen.
Oh, hello, world. Welcome back for your comic book news, $1 million mailbox, whatever you want to call it. This is where we look at comics. I come in here and I spread some comics out. Now, if you want to see your comics on the $1 million mailbox, there's one place that you can send them, only one, to the $1 million mailbox, P.O. Box 1163,
Arcata, California, 95518. Listen to my dulcet tones as I explain that the weed of crime bears bitter fruit, but the weed of comics bears delicious snacks for us all. And we're going to look at them today. We're going to look at some of my very favorite comics, right? Like, comics to many are synonymous with the superhero genre, but, and don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those anti-superhero guys. I love superhero comics. I love them all, but man, I genuinely love all the different genre styles that comics can encompass and do bring their unique talents to bear on that material. So today we're going to talk with Stephen Brower. We've had Stephen Brower in here before. We looked at his comic, Crime Comics Confidential, and we're going to be talking about his new Femme Fatales Kickstarter. And then, I do have books in the $1 million mailbox. I've been promising to get to The Darkest Image and some other stuff too. I'm going to delay it even more because they're so meaty. I'm going to invite some of those creators in, and we're going to go in depth on it on a show as soon as I can. But for now, please keep those comics coming in because I want to read them, and I'm that cheap. Speaking of which, let's bring in my fellow cheapskate, co-host of this show. You know him and love him as Captain Fun. He's Larry Young. Hey, Larry.
Hey, Dan. That's awesome. I love I still haven't got over the weed of comics. And then, oh man, you said something else too. I forget.
There's bitter fruit.
Yeah. I don't know. Your dulcet tones. All of that was great. Showing off with the microphone. You know I'm a big fan.
Thanks, Larry.
Of you. Not just showing off.
Well, today we're going to look at some of the very best crime comics ever, and we're going to talk with an expert on like where this whole crime comics thing even began. So why don't we bring him in? We've been talking to him in the green room. Let's bring in Stephen Brower right now. Hey, Stephen.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Hey. Tell us about crime.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, guys, I'm gonna go where we go when we talk about comics.
We're on a mission from God.
Here into the $1 million comics cam. And let me, because I've got a copy of Stephen's book. The last book that Stephen came in here to promote. Oh, the cam is a little off kilter right now. Crime Comics Confidential. And why don't you, right up front, Stephen, tell us about your new Kickstarter, okay?
Oh, sure. So it really grew out of that book, which I did for Yo Books, Crime Comics Confidential, which was a collection of pre-code crime stories. And that led me to a genre within a genre, which is women in crime comics, pre-code, golden age crime stories. And so that's what the Kickstarter is. It's Fatal Femme Fatale. And it is focused on women in crime or women criminals, which is one of the really sought after genres in comics. It's very hard well, let me put it this way. They're very expensive to buy. Especially Fox's Crimes by Women series, which came out in the 40s.
People love their dames, right? Like it's malls and dames and femme fatales and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, so many comics at the time featured damsels in distress or, even bondage covers and the pulps as well. And the women in crime comics, are the opposite of that. It's the women who are in control. And I curated this book with my daughter, Jonna Brower, who's a comic book artist and we really selected stories where that's true, where the women are empowered. So it's the opposite of the sort of misogyny that was going on at the same exact time.
Okay, so what I'm looking at right here is your Crime Confidential, and I saw your Kickstarter. Well, I'll pull it up on screen in a second.
Oh, great.
Similar format, right? So people who are fans of Crime Comics Confidential might know what to expect.
Yes, it's actually smaller, though. It's 8.5, 11, where this was
okay.
Really a giant sized book. It was, I forget the exact dimension, 13 by 17. Yo Books indulged me there, and I really like creating books as objects, but the new one's toned down. I like, every time I do a book, I like to do it a little different.
Okay, I mean, one of my it's not a complaint because I love the oversized format. It's great for looking at that killer Golden Age artwork, but it's hard to fit on a shelf, Stephen.
I know.
I hate to be that cavalier about it or whatever. Mercenary.
No, I completely agree. Like I said, they really indulged me. I wanted it to be a beautiful object, and it is. But I've since come to my senses.
Because when you're an influencer like me, you know, when you're bringing in the kind of YouTube money that I'm bringing in, money is not the object here on What Comics I Get. It's strictly about shelf space.
We just put up 2 more bookshelves in my house, so I completely understand.
Okay, so I was looking through this, and there's some great stuff, classic, both great classic crime artists, as well as the subjects being great American femme fatales, female criminals, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you have Leonard Starr, who's amazing. Matt Baker.
Matt Baker's the best. I'm sorry, all-time favorite.
Just great. And Joe Kubert early on. And of course, I always include Mort Metzgen in there, George Tuska. So it's really the top names. What's really interesting about the Fox series, some of the stories are featured in the book, on Crimes by Women, is there are no credits that exist for any of those books.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, there's not writer or artist. There for what I don't know if they were, it just wasn't recorded, or perhaps they were ashamed. I can't imagine why. But if you go through, there's absolutely no credits for those.
So is that lost to time totally, or did you?
I think so.
Were you able to make some educated guesses based on the style of the art?
Not really, and those books the styles are a little bit odd. But yeah, there's just no credits. But these other stories that we collected from there are, and so wherever we could, accredit something, we do.
And there's such a tremendous amount of the lesser ones too. Like, it was a very popular genre.
Yeah. Well, there's all these different. Fox did a lot of them, but there's all these different comics dedicated to women in crime, or within crime comics, there's stories that feature women in crime.
And besides anonymous work, like, a lot of those dudes back then worked under pen names for different companies to get out of exclusives contracts and stuff too. So you never know. There's a real mix going on.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Stephen, I'm dying to know. I'm a giant fan of process and behind the scenes. Like, what did you use for the source art for these things?
Yeah, great question.
Oh, I've been collecting for years.
So you scan printed examples.
Yeah. I have a ridiculous collection of thousands of comics, probably.
That's pretty labor intensive though, because are you getting really super clean scans from your copies?
Oh, then I process them, so everything is restored.
I hope this book is $1,500 a copy, because that's a lot of work, man.
Well, I've been I've been publishing books for a long time, since 2005, and I work full time as faculty at Marywood University, you know, it would be very difficult to support myself just doing books.
It's just so intensive, and
Yeah, I love it though. I love looking at the art. I love reading the stories.
And I've seen many a golden age reprint collection out there that is just miserable in its reproduction, and
Yeah.
this is exactly, as Larry says, the opposite. You did a great. It looks so consistent throughout here.
I was just gonna say, just look at the color of the pages behind the panels of art. Like that's all pretty. That's all the same as far to my eye, right? That's not every scan isn't the same. That's just right there. That's good work.
And you made the correct paper choice. There's no gloss on this paper. It's a little toothy, a little bit pulpy. It's just right.
I think over the years, though, in general, reprints have gotten much better. They used to be terrible, you know, on glossy paper, and both Marvel and DC were tracing the pages and then recoloring them, and you know, and charging $35, $40 20 years ago, and it was just terrible. But you know, I think over the years, you know, Yo and graphics have really brought, you know, reproductions along.
Well, and Tashin now is stepping up to the plate in a big way with the in a big way, much better than it's ever been before. So I want to talk about crime comics a little bit, and I just want to bring in some of my favorite crime comics, and maybe we just Steven, I don't know how much you're up on the modern stuff, but let's talk.
Absolutely, and honestly, I'm not, but I'm looking forward to this.
And here's when I say modern, right? Here we go, Torpedo. Like that's to me to an old
modern too.
This is modern, but it's definitely more modern. It came out I remember seeing it in the reprints in maybe the late 80s, early 90s here in America for the first time, but it had been around for a while. Sanchez Abuli, Jordy Burnett, although Alex Toth did the very first issue of Torpedo. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I love the cover. That's
and then to have to follow Alex Toth and to turn it into a masterpiece that is Torpedo is I think that was really a tricky thing for somebody to pull off, and Burnett definitely pulls it off.
I did. As we're driving to school, I told my kid we were going to be talking about crime books, and he said, "Daddy, you have to mention Eduardo Risso," and I couldn't drive because I was tearing up. I was like, "Just that you know who that is, I've done my job."
So this is Toth. This first right here. This is the Toth stuff.
Yeah, it's beautiful,
and it's very good. I mean, of course, it's good. It's more than good. It's great. But I'm gonna say. Burnett doesn't lose a step and maybe is better on this particular for this book.
Better than Alex Toth?
Yeah, I like it better. I'm sorry. Mr. Toth. Let's see here. Because he's a little bit more detailed with his rendering, right? Toth is very, very, very stylized in a way we love. A lot of thick lines, but not as much in the way of inky detail as
I'm with you. I mean, I'm not gonna of course that's a completely decent follow-up, but I still get the there's two Darrens kind of vibe from this.
But it was only one issue by Toth, and then I've got 5 hardcover volumes of Burnett just taking this book and making it's so great because it's hardcore. Like our main character, the Torpedo, Luca, he's raping people. He's killing people. He's a ruthless gangster in the 30s, but it's also got a lighthearted comedic touch to it. It's so European. I think only a European can pull this off. See, great stuff.
I mean, that's
They're also beautifully noir. You know, they really capture that high contrast. The spotting of the blacks and the design of the pages are beautiful.
To me, it's my all-time favorite when I go like crime comics. What's at the very, very, very top of my list? It's Torpedo 1936. It's just, that's what it is.
So that just reminded me, though, what I was just looking up. Cordo Maltese is being published by IDW now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was another one my kids said. Make sure to mention.
Miller's going to do.
Oh, cool.
Miller's going to do a cover for it, I think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool.
He's
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Torpedo is great.
Yeah, because he could draw the sexy dames so well, and all the action and crime stuff in the gritty streets of New York in 1936. Like it's all there. It's so good. I cannot recommend Torpedo
Enough.
Great.
And there's these great volumes available, and I believe they're out in softcover now too. So it's an affordable thing. You know, if you want to be one of those lesser types and own a softcover, when I'm not going to judge you to your face, only in private. Okay. Speaking of Frank Miller, I wanted to pull in another modern one, right? But like, this is Frank Miller. What do they call this one? The Hard Goodbye, right? This is the first Sin City graphic novel. But this version that I'm holding here it's got a little book plate. Here it says, "Thank you. On behalf of Frank Miller and Dark Horse Comics, I want to personally thank you, the comics retailer, for your strong support of Sin City throughout these last 15 years. And I'd like to extend this special hardcover edition of The Hard Goodbye as a token of our gratitude. For free, Mike Richardson, who's been a guest on this show, one of my favorite interviews and one of my favorite people ever. Like, I could see making something like this, but then you charge out the ass and make it a limited edition and make it very hard. You don't just send one to every comic book store in America that supported you unless you're just true comics. That's Mike Richardson and Dark Horse.
So Dan, I got to tell this story.
Yeah.
Available Light with Warren Ellis was late, and all my retailer buddies were counting on that as Christmas presents, and I'm screwed because Warren just did it whenever he felt like. So you know what I did? Just me, a little half drunk guy in his house. It was a $25 book retail. So I sent 2 copies of Astronauts in Trouble to every single person who did that, and freight paid. It cost them nothing. I don't care. Here's $26 from me. If you would have rather had $26, tell your guys to just sell those 2 things.
That's awesome.
Because and you know, so like, oh, Mike Richardson gave away a Frank Miller book. Oh, congratulations. That's marketing 101.
But you know what? They commissioned this limited edition in leather that you can't buy. You couldn't buy this.
No, it's absolutely cool. Don't get me wrong.
Like, I'm just going, Frank Miller, you're my hero, Mike.
As a retailer, though, you kept yours. Like, what you really should have done was like sold that to or given it to your best Frank Miller fan, and then
I had 2 retail accounts, so I did.
Oh, did you? All right, no, fair enough.
I got 2 of these puppies. I got 2 of everything that's a retailer exclusive from my area.
Larry. Oh my god, that's worth having another account just to get those, right?
It kind of was. I mean, I was never big on like selling a limited thing. This is such a rare object to me and such a special book to me.
Yeah, because
this is. I don't know if I was reading Dark Horse Presents when Sin City dropped in the pages of Dark Horse Presents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not the first graphic novel, not the first issue, even like the first 8 pages at a time that they dribbled out to us and redefined modern crime comics.
Absolutely.
And completely reinvented Frank's style from one that was already influencing the entire industry into a new one that just like said everyone go, what? We don't have to do superheroes? What? We could do this crazy stylistic stuff? And even Jim Lee, like Mainstream Supreme, jumped in and did Deathblow and just aped this style 100% and gave credit to Miller for it.
The one thing I loved most about Sin City is that it taught all the indie guys what spot color was.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing that like everybody went, oh wait, you can do this now.
Exactly. And just that Frank was, he's obviously drawing from all the tropes, right, Stephen? Like he's a Mickey Spillane, hard-boiled detective
Right.
kind of guy. But to visually take it this way, right? I would say maybe pulling in a lot of Krigstein maybe influence in this phase of his.
And Steranko.
Yeah. Beautiful stuff, man.
Yeah, I agree. The movies were great too.
And this first one in particular, I felt is the best of the Sin Cities. Like if you were to only read one, you read The Hard Goodbye, and you could even not read anything else and like be really satisfied with this story that's in Hard Goodbye. Dan DiDio was in here, and they're about to release, though, Frank Miller's about to release the latest Sin City volume, but it's going to be a Western set in 18 something in Basin City again. So color me excited for that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so then we can have another wave of copying Miller, perhaps.
Right. Western. I was just thinking, well, Westerns are going to be a big deal, man. That's cool.
Miller's influence alone, I've talked about it on the show before. One of my favorite things to talk about is the way Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Tick were both essentially like they don't exist without Frank Miller's work. They were really like parody in many ways of his style and the exact characters and stories and stuff from his book. And those two things are gigantic mega franchises. I mean, Turtles is way bigger, but still doesn't get any bigger than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Right.
And like that's just a little offshoot of like they were so into Frank Miller they had to like copy him.
I think they just those two guys were just like super inspired, right? And they just caught the lightning in the bottle. I can't, I worked at That's Entertainment, the Eisner Award winning That's Entertainment back then, and Kevin Eastman would come in every once in a while. And so when they did their first printing, of course, come to the store and we'll move some of those 3,000 copies for your little confection no one will care about. And then it's 2023 and we're still talking about that. That blows my mind.
You know what's so cool too about this book is that the way it works so well in this small format. Like this is the smallest it's ever been produced. This is like manga tankobon format. They also released a Lone Wolf and Cub hardcover. Dark Horse did a similar thing for people who supported their Lone Wolf and Cub reprint series. This is so modern, more modern. Like when I was a kid working in the comic book store in the 90s, this was it. This was where I wanted comics to go. Image was going in this other way, and it was like the stuff coming out from Dark Horse from the Legends imprint, Frank Miller, Stan Sakai, Mike Mignola, Mike Allred, just the creme de la creme of what was coming out at that time, I think. And they sold books and they got Eisners and stuff. But like, I see people who say they're 90s comics fans today, and it's like, no offense to people watching out there, but you like garbage. You love garbage. I mean, I love garbage, but.
Oh, you mean like the 90s superhero stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's so many great comics from the 90s.
It's not for us, man. That was for kids 10 or 15 years younger than us.
I get it. Spawn or Wildcats, they were cool, but there were so many genuinely great, like mind-blowingly craft-enhancing comics coming out during that period that I go, ugh, any time spent on that Image stuff is a little bit of a...
Just pick anything Dave Sims Renegade Press published, right? You could just, like, I was a giant Cerebus and Love and Rockets fan. Like, so I kind of missed all that superhero stuff. I'm like, yeah, Jim Lee's great. Spawn's not for me. Like Wildcats, I don't even care.
They stunk. They stunk. You like well-written comics, and they were pretty usually, but never well-written until much later when they started hiring real writers.
Yeah, we don't have to cap on the 90s. It was a different time. We've all learned lessons.
Okay, but speaking of the 90s, here's one of those 90s crime comics that was coming out that I loved. And I'm just going to give it, I'm not going to flip through this thing because, like, we don't have all day. But Lapham.
Yeah, we gotta. Do you see Maria in the side discussion? She's like, talk more Cerebus, and you get more engagement. So we have to do that Dave one that we keep threatening.
I almost brought it in for this very show, Larry.
Did you really?
But I haven't digested it yet, so I don't feel like I can talk
which
about
one? Alex Raymond one?
Yeah,
no? Yeah. No, I don't think we'll ever digest that. Anyways. Sorry. I just wanted to give Maria a shout out.
It's high literary fiber. It's tough.
Just like Stray Bullets.
Yeah, so Stray Bullets, to me, was great because it's modern crime comics that were not a throwback. They're not all tough guy, Mickey Spillane, Sin City tropes. Like Sin City, he did that to the nth degree. You can't, really out Mickey Spillane in comics. I think what Miller did. But what you can do is bring in dirtbags and methamphetamines and white slavery and just the weirdness, everything weird that is Stray Bullets. And do it in this amazing style that Lapham had. I mean, Lapham was a guy I first read from, holy shit, what was that company, Larry? That Barry Windsor Smith, Valiant, right? He was doing work for Valiant.
Didn't you just talk to Adam Freeman?
Yeah, and then he was working for Jim Shooter at Valiant, and then went over and did Warriors of Plasm when Shooter branched off and did right. Like, who is this guy? Like the artwork, whatever in those books, but in this, he brought all his storytelling tricks to bear. My favorite stuff is like the unreliable narrator stuff, kind of that he does in the Amy race car stories in here, where it's like a comic story that's sort of like it's being told by a child, but so it's just filled with this, just a really weird energy. And
speaking of being influenced, I like his whole I'm only doing 8 panels a page because that 9 that Dave did in Watchmen, that's just 1 panel too much.
9 is for chumps.
But you can tell that he's got a little formalism going on but it's still awesome storytelling. I loved Stray Bullets. I thought that was a great book.
Oh, the biggest problem I had with it was the big gaps in its publication.
Yeah, but can't rush genius, right?
But on the other hand, I'm reading a graphic novel here, this omnibus, and here I'm on page 1191.
Oh,
that's
my
insane.
God.
Here that he wrote and drew and illustrated. It's an epic achievement and worth reading for sure. But I'm gonna finish this off with what I was my favorite crime comic of recent that I could remember, and it's from a guy who's like done no shortage of great crime comics, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, 2 guys I should say. You guys read any of their stuff?
I read Pulp. That was great. I really enjoyed that. And then
I think I sent you that, Larry.
You did send me that. That's why I read it. People send me stuff. I always honor their weight in the post office line by reading what they send me.
This is a Stephen Brower book. Okay, Stephen. You really do want to seek this one out because it's the story of a guy who was a pulp author. He wrote pulp Western stories. He's he's the main character, but then it's a crime drama story. Right. So with such a killer twist ending and a amazing. I mean, everything by Brubaker and Phillips is at the highest level of craft I think that has ever been brought to bear on crime comics.
Wow.
Like, I don't think
I just can't agree with that, even if it was true.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, what about Paul Grist's Kane comic? I honestly think that's the top of the line for modern comics because it's so it's so effortless. It's
Yes.
like that guy's just giving us Hill Street Blues on paper, and everybody's acting like that's not a big deal. I don't know. I like
That's
that.
also a deeply weird book, though.
Yes.
Everything
Well-
from Grist. Grist is a weird guy. It's just a weird guy.
Well, he's English, right? That's why we revolted.
So maybe that's why this is real American stuff. I mean, dude, Ed Brubaker
Oh yeah, Brubes.
wrote life comics. He used to write and draw his crime comics that were a lot closer to the Stray Bullets, like I was talking about. It was like kids in the suburbs doing petty crimes for drugs, kind of stuff. And he cut his teeth on that. But he and the artist here, Sean Phillips, are such students of crime genre outside of comics, everywhere, in the movies, in the novels, in the that they've synthesized all that stuff and turned it into just this beautiful combination. It's almost unbelievable to me when I read them how much I like them. Like
Wow.
Ed Brubaker is next level as a comics writer, and I think it's because he started as a cartoonist, and so he knows how to tell a story in cartooning, but then he just found the perfect collaborator. And these guys they're knocking it out.
Yeah, it looks great.
I want to also, this is not even their main book. These two things I brought in are their side projects, right? Like they have a regular book, Criminal, that's coming out, and they have the Reckless series of graphic novels that are coming out, which are all great. But man, if you have a chance, there's only one Brubaker Phillips book, go get Pulp, especially if you look like any of the three guys on this show, right? Like all.
I can't believe how pigeonholed I get.
You at all look like us, and at all comics or crime. Pulp is my number one recommendation. Now, if it was a younger person, like for Walker, Larry,
Yeah,
you gotta. This is it.
He's cracking through 100 bullets right now. That's why he made sure that I had to give props to Rissa because he's loving that.
Such good stuff, but man, there's
I'll get it. Yeah,
there's four, and there's like an omnibus edition. It's amazing. This could be such a great Netflix series show. It's almost tough to describe. It feels on the surface like sort of like a kick-ass, like a realistic superhero type thing, but it's so something different. There's so many layers to their work. I don't want to spoil what it is, but like you're trying to figure out what's real and what's not, what's in your head, what's reality, what's in the guy's head throughout the whole thing, and then you're constantly surprised by it. It's amazing.
You can tell by looking at the cover that this is more complex than their usual because they added another person.
And it was wild because like these guys were in the middle of churning out their great stuff. Anybody else who had success with like Criminal, we would just be on Criminal book 20 right now, and they'd be churning out the same thing over and over again. But they're like, no, we're going to take a year and pivot and tell this story, and then we come back to the other stories. And putting them out in an true OGN format now, like they've switched away from serialization, and now they just work on a book until it's done, and then they put it out.
Who do you mean, Brube and Sean, or just Image?
Brube and Sean. No, Image. They're all it. Image is a scam. Can I be the first one to say it? Can I call it crimes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like you can end up owing Image Comics money on a they're publishing your successful comic book. Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of ways. I don't want to say they're criminals because I don't want to get sued. What I want to say is that like they're almost like a vanity press in many ways. That's their business model with slightly higher standards.
I can't even talk about this. I'm going to be Paul Levitz about this one. Oh, that's interesting.
Just nod gracefully. While I needle you, Larry, while I needle you like I needled Levitz.
I'll tell you all about it in the green room. Oh my God.
But okay, you guys hear what I'm saying. I'm not.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not
Absolutely.
trying to cast aspersions on
Right,
it.
right.
But to me, in this day and age, Image made sense. Their deal made sense then when they created it, I think, because the bar to self-publishing was a lot higher than it is right now. And right now, just kickstart the gosh darn thing and call it a day. And I think the serialization of issues too, like, is so wasteful. Like, it has a purpose, it can build momentum and stuff, but it's just, there's so much waste built into it, from the guy who prints them to then the distributor who's got waste to then the comic book store that's got waste. Like, I not the biggest fan of that model for a new publisher, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a waste for anybody who isn't Marvel or DC even. You know, I think Image and Dark Horse, they're just killing trees, man. That, you know, I mean, there's all sorts of economic direct market models of why that happens, and God bless them. I'll say top 5, but anybody else, come on, just do a book, spend a year doing your book, and then sell it forever. Why? It's one press release. It's one cover. It's one. I mean, come on. You know how I feel about this.
Well, Stephen, why don't you tell us? You're the ultra modern. You're on the bleeding edge here of comic publishing with this Kickstarter model. Like, so are you? Is this going to come out through Yo too? I'm sorry if you said that. I know the last one did.
Oh no, this is I'm doing this myself. It's really an experiment to see if it works, you know, and try something new. And if it works, then I'll do more. So it just seemed to be the right time to give this a shot.
So for you, is it always crime, golden age crime? Is that it? That's your area?
Oh no. You know, I started the first comics related book was the biography of Mort Meskin. And then we did that was with Fantagraphics, and we did a follow-up of reprints. And so no, I follow the different, you know, genres. I like westerns as well. I like them all. I like romance, but a lot has been written about that. Crime, it seemed pretty ripe for a re-examination. There wasn't a lot. And then women in crime, especially, is hardly, you know, hasn't been covered much. So, you know, I sort of follow my interests and what I feel like researching. Oddly, I've some subjects I've written books about, I know a lot about to begin with, and some I don't. And so it's an opportunity for me to explore and learn and research. I can give you an example of that. I did the book on Louis Armstrong's collages after I did Woody Guthrie's artwork. Now, Woody Guthrie, I've known, you know, I've been a fan of since I was 12. Armstrong, I hardly knew anything about, and the editor brought it to me as a project. And through that process, I just fell in love with Louis Armstrong. I'm a giant Louis Armstrong fan today. And so, you know, that's just sort of my path, is to, you know, delve in and see what I can learn. I love learning things. I've loved this show so far because I've learned about all these books I didn't know about before.
Well, what do you think it is? I mean, crime is one of those genres of fiction that it's one of the few that today is still a strong genre up against superheroes now, which are kind of a science fiction subgenre, I guess you would call superheroes, right?
Yeah.
But like, crime holds up, dude, and it's been holding up strong as a genre since the pulp era, right? So for like well over a century, people are very interested in crime, whether it's true crime or pulp fiction crime or whatever. I got my reasons. I love it. I'm fascinated by crime. I love a good, I think Michael Mann is my favorite crime movie director. He's done so many great ones. What do you think it is about crime in particular that just makes it maybe the evergreen storytelling genre?
Well, I think you mentioned it before, Dan. It's you can live vicariously through the criminals without having to go to jail. It's a romanticism of the outlaw and what they can get away with. There's also the whole Robin Hood ethos, right, where they rob from the rich and give to the poor, and that's something I discovered writing the last crime book. Is all those guys were called Robin Hoods, Al Capone and Pretty Boy Floyd, and they weren't, and that was just mythos, but they were romanticized in that way, and so there's something about wearing nice suits and driving great cars and, having tons of money without any consequence.
And it's very American in its essence, in the sense that we want to be rugged individualists, right? So like that fits very well into that one lone outlaw on the road, on the run. It seems so fun and glamorous, Bonnie and Clyde, whatever they're doing, but these guys are creeps. And but people are fascinated even by the creepiest ones. Like, we've got in the headlines right now, we've got our Idaho killer and stuff, and people are fascinated by the details on serial killers and the sickest, the Jeffrey Dahmer series that was just on. And I don't know, I've got my own theory. Living vicariously through those events maybe is part of it.
I actually have a sub theory that I think that some of these things are just so horrible that human nature amongst regular folks is just like, well, that can't possibly be true. So whatever's happening, this is just a misunderstanding. Let's go watch this documentary and find, or listen to the podcast and find out. And I think that's what, because my wife always gets drawn into this stuff, and except for Only Murders in the Building, she like immediately gets repelled, right? Because true crime, it's in the title. There's crime, right? And so she's always like, well, what happened here? Oh my God. But I don't know. I think that's the interaction I have with it.
Idaho guy has all the makings of a like one of the fascinating true crime podcast things about like guy who's so, I mean, he's a vegan. He's a militant vegan.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. He was a PhD candidate. He was like so many, and he was going on Reddit and like talking with people on the true crime boards. He was interacting with people about this crime, even like wild.
Yeah. That's,
oh my God. Was he really?
It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. So close to getting away from it with it too. It's crazy that they talk about how intelligent he is and stuff, but and like the mistakes that were made are so see, that's why I think some people might watch true crime things, because they piece together like, what are all the mistakes that these guys made? I'm not going to make that mistake when I do my final crime, right? But we're almost in the age where like it doesn't matter how sneaky you are. We're in such a surveillance society now that there's almost no getting away with anything.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I've gotten away with though, guys? I've gotten away with several years worth of free comics just streaming into the $1 million mailbox. And I need more. So if you guys want to see your comics on this screen and want to hear them talked about with the kind of verve and vitriol that we bring to the table, send them to the $1 million mailbox, P.O. Box 1163, Arcata, California, 95518. Larry and I will give you a fair shake for sure, and whoever else we bring in the future. And Stephen, I hope that you'll come back in the future and talk comics with us again. Will you do that?
I'd love to. This was a lot of fun.
I'll tell you what, if you send me a copy of your book, we'll dedicate time and space, and we will go over every page of that darn thing.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, I got to get us out of here. Papa's got a ton of paid for work to do. I'm so behind the 8 ball. 2023. They say it's a recession, but man, it is coming out like a cannon out of the gate right now.
Excellent.
So I got to get us out of here. I'm going to play our closing credits, and then I'll play a little cameo at the end of the thing just to keep you watching the credits. There, you got anything to plug or talk about?
Oh, nothing. Let's throw it to Steven. How about you have some stuff?
Steven, what do you got? You want to do a plug?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk
Oh.
over you. I just want to thank you both. This was great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thank
It's always
you.
fun. It's always fun to just think about comics, think about crime. Let's go do some crimes, folks. We'll see you next time.